Hey everybody, this is the Tea and Tequila show with
Woo!
Rocky Callan and Sarah Fox. And we are going to be talking to you about the importance of finishing your book. I know for myself and for so many authors that I have talked to that we are such creative creatures, and so we get lots of ideas, and then what happens is we start a lot of different books, but then we never finish any of them. And when you do that, you just become a serial starter. And so we really want to go into the importance of why you need to finish the book before moving on. So
You don't want to be serial anything in your name. You don't want anything serial in your name at all.
We don't want any of that stuff. So, Sarah, why don't you talk a little bit about the importance of this? I know that you brought this up when we were planning.
So you have to finish, people. I just finished my book, so I'm off the high right now, still on it from finishing a manuscript, and it's the best feeling in the world. Beyond like anything else, it just feels really good to have it printed out in your hands, to be like, I did this. And people start taking you more seriously. Not to go into ego, you shouldn't care what people think, but it's a nice thing that when you can talk to your friends, family, be like, I actually finished it. You're not just one of those guys in the coffee shop who have written only like 3,000 words and are like, hey, I've never written a book, but I have a lot of couple first drafts. Everyone knows that person. God bless them. I hope they do great in life and eventually finish it. But there's that guy who for 10 years is only 10 pages into the book. And you just don't want to be that guy. And I know you'll have other ideas as you go along, but I think it's so important to just write them down in a notebook. They're not going anywhere. And then if they're still pull on you, that means you're meant to write them. And if you write in the notebook and you forget about it, then I guess that book wasn't really strong enough for you to commit to.
Yes, I think that there's so much there. I know I have so many ideas. I mean, for different genres, for different projects. And I know I have to write them down. I have to make sure I capture them. But at the same time, I know that if I don't finish a book, that it will just go into this flow of not ever finishing. So with Sarah, we have this arrangement where we're going to swap manuscripts. And I found out, like, we decided it really, I think 6 or 8 weeks or so before, like, the deadline to swap. And I went into it thinking I was going to do a certain book, but I decided on a different one. But now I know that I have to stay committed to this book. I need to get it to her by the date. And it makes your brain say, no, but look at this idea and this idea and this idea. Like, your brain wants you to stay in status quo. Your brain wants you to stay like safe. Like, it's so cozy here with not having anything to commit to. But what you have to show up for is the fact that you're a writer and you complete the things you set out to complete. And what happens is, especially for those of you who've never completed a manuscript or a book, is that the confidence you get and the experience of writing a complete book is something that you can't compare. You can't learn elsewhere. You can't read a book about it. You can't go and ingest 1,000 articles about what it feels like. It has to come from you. And unless you go through that process, you won't experience it. And I always talk about, like, your first book is like your gateway book, because once you've written that book, then you're like, I can do this. I'm capable. I'm able. And so when the next book idea, or when you open up your notebook for the 1,000 ideas that you do have, you can pick one and commit to it and know that you will complete it, that you'll have something to show for it, that it won't just be wasted time and energy. And I never think that writing is a waste of time. For me, I know it's like the highest form of honoring myself when I write. So all writing's good, but why not make it writing that can contribute to a whole, writing that you can then print off, like Sarah's talking about, print off and be amazed by what you've created, and that the fact that you created all of these words are yours, and there's characters and there's a plot and there's a beginning, middle, and end and that's something you can share. And I think that that's such a beautiful and exciting thing that far too few people actually take the time to go through the process to get to. And I, with my clients, I always talk about that writing a book is a transformational experience because you have to show up for yourself consistently. And how often do we show up for ourselves? But also, it's a matter of like, how do you deal with struggle? How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with blank pages? How do you deal with the unknown? How do you deal with with freaking anger
So true.
when things aren't going your way? Or how do you roll with the punches? Like, so many things that you find out about yourself during the writing process as you're experiencing the writing process. So this is the big thing. Experiencing the writing process is very different than learning about the writing process. And
True.
you have to be in it. You have to be in the trenches to know what it feels like, in the trenches to hone your craft, in the trenches to actually become an author that can be read. And
True. You can't read half a manuscript. You're never going to get published.
Exactly.
You won't be the next J.K. Rowling with, I've got 10 pages done today.
And the rest, I promise, is going to be freaking brilliant. We can't take your word for it. I'm sorry.
You actually have to give an agent, once they ask for the full manuscript, a full manuscript. You can't just stick with the first chapter, which they often just ask for. You need the whole thing ready by the time to send it around.
Oh my goodness. So that's the thing is when you're writing fiction, you have to have the full manuscript. And I was just telling Sarah before we got on the call that there was a young adult author named Becca Fitzpatrick, and she wrote about in her blog when she was beginning her writing journey, she didn't know what the process for pitching agents was. So she just wrote her sample chapters and then started pitching. Lo and behold, she gets a response that they want a full manuscript, and she hadn't realized that she needed a full manuscript. So she plowed through and wrote the book in 2 weeks. And she didn't get a yes from that agent, but then she learned the process. She had to get to that finishing point. And from there, she was able to edit her book and get it to a place where then it could be sold. Then she could get the agent. So if your big dream is to have a literary agent, is to sell to one of the big 6 publishers, you can't do that with a bunch of ideas. You have to do it with written pages.
And you can't get seduced by the new idea. It's so tempting. It's like, oh, well, this one wasn't as perfect as I thought it'd be, this manuscript, but this new idea, because I haven't written anything about it, seems perfect and fresh. No, it will also be messy when you write it. Put it in that notebook and move on. It's like, without fail, when you start a new manuscript, that's when you're going to get 500 ideas for the new ones. Stay the course. And then once you've completed it, you'll feel great, and then you can work on the other one. It'll give you something instantly to do once this is done, and you can let it breathe and get ready for editing. But you can't be. It's like marriage. It's like a marriage. You have to see this one through until death. You have to just
in it to win it, baby. In it to win it.
Because you did love fell in love with this idea at one point. Remember what made you fall in love with your marriage?
I love the marriage comparison, and that's actually something that I do with clients that feel really blocked or that feel really like they've fallen out of love. So I make them write a love letter to their book. I make them write out why they fell in love with it to begin with. Like, what was exciting about it? What was enticing about it? What was the energy they had? What would they feel if they never were able to complete it? Like, it never came, like the vision they had for it never came to fruition. And it turns into this really sappy thing where people are like, oh my God, I miss you, you know? And so that's what you want to create. So when you feel like you're in a lull and things aren't working out and you're like, oh man, this other idea is so awesome, recommit to the vision you had for it. So were you going to write a poetic and haunting tale of loss and tragedy and offer a glimmer of hope? Or were you going to write a laugh out loud, hilarious tale of women in corporate America and how they get laid by?
I want to read these stories, Rocky. Stop promising me things. You have to finish yours though first.
I know. Damn it. So, but the thing is, like, find that vision, find that really sexy tagline that or blurb that you would want. Like, who do you want to write on your book? Like, think of your favorite author and the genre that you're writing, and their blurbs. I always love those beautiful blurbs that they write. Beautifully written, plot twist, blah blah blah. Think about what you'd written on your cover, and remember, it will never get there
if you don't
write this book.
And it will never be perfect the whole time. You have a honeymoon period with your book, and don't expect. What I think a lot of my clients I see is they start freaking out, running away as soon as they realize, oh no, I don't like this particular chapter. Oh no, it's not easy for me to write today. Everyone goes through that. Neil Gaiman talks about how every 50 pages, it's the 50-page mark. He calls that and goes, this is garbage. I'm not a writer. I'll never do it. And she starts laughing because it's going to be clockwork with him at this certain point in the book. She's like, you're 50 pages in. He goes, how did you know? She goes, you're always like this 50 pages in. So even the greats don't always love their book. That's not a reason to walk away. And a lot of people think, oh, it must be a sign that this is not a good book or I'm not meant to finish it. No, just finish it. Everyone feels that way.
Exactly. I love that because it's true. What happens is there is always points in your book where you're like, whoa, I just wrote a bunch of shit.
It's true. I get that about like every other chapter. You're like, what is this garbage?
What is this life? What did I do? But this is what, Sarah and I were talking about, is that you have to write all of that because after that comes the editing process, and you can't edit a blank page. Mm-hmm. And so that editing process is going to be what turns the mess that you have in your hands into the vision you have in your head. And so you have to get there. You have to give yourself permission to get there. Allow yourself the time and space and energy to get there, so that way you can create what you have in your heart and make it real. And it's so easy to give up. Like, I'm at the beginning of a manuscript and I was getting so stuck. I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't commit to this book. But I also know that I committed, so I can't give up on it yet. And I think that's a big thing, is that we give up on our stories. We give up on our books. And you have to be unwilling to give up on it, because everything is something that you can figure out. You don't like the character, then make a fucking new one.
That's true. If you're stuck somewhere for a while, more than like a day, you might not be feeling well. Think about what is it that's blocking you. Like, write it out, and then you'll eventually, or even take a few days off. I don't encourage it all the time, but there's some times where it's just that broken. And then no more than like a couple, I'd say that like no more than a week at the very, very most. But then it'll give you space to figure out, why am I getting blocked? And often, I heard one writer speak. He said, your writer's block is just you don't know what your character naturally would do in this situation. Like, you don't know your character's desires well enough, and you don't know your character well enough to say, the block is simply, what would this person naturally do? And I think that's true. I think if you do get writer's block, which is going to a whole nother episode, is you just don't know your characters well enough. Is pretty much always where it goes back to.
So true. That's an excellent point. And so that's another thing, is that if you're writing, you're really trying to get to that end point, and you're struggling, you want to make sure that you honor what your characters would do. So you have to sit with them, or you have to sit with the setting, don't be afraid to go silent for a couple days or an hour or whatever you need to get that breath of fresh air and think on these different issues versus staring at the blank page. Like, just go back and think about what you need to tweak or change or implement or write about to make it so it flows again. But then always come back ready. And you need to commit. You need to be able to allow yourself to keep showing up. It's just like the writing habit, the writing routine that we were talking about that's so important, is that when you're showing up for yourself in this capacity, is you're just proving yourself time and time again that you're a writer, that you're an author. But the other side of that is you have to show up, but you also have to complete. You also have to finish, because it's the finished book that allows you to really claim that name author. And when you have that, then there's just this immense power and relief and gratitude and satisfaction that you'll experience that you cannot compare to anything else.
It's true. It's really true. Like, once you complete it, I'm very grateful that I finished my first manuscript. It was not very long in middle school, but it was like a novella length, because that way I knew for that point forward in my life, I can complete something. And I think that's why I've had 4 other manuscripts. This is my 5th one I just completed. Is I've had that ability to write so much, I think, for a relatively young life, is because I've done it. And once you've done it once, it's 10 times easier the next time, because you don't have as much fear. You have less blocks, because I did this once. I can easily do this again. Like, once you get past the first book, it's way exponentially easier. So I think that's why it's so important to get one done, because it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Exactly. It's so true. I mentioned this before, but 15 years to write my first book. So I had the opposite of Sarah's experience, where I took that long time. I was the one that had all of the ideas that never committed to them, that never followed through. And then I threw away so much of the manuscript when I actually got into the editorial process. I was like, man, I wasted so much time. But then my next book was written in 6 weeks. My third book was written in 8 days. I don't know if I'll ever beat the 8 days thing again. I'm not sure.
You might this time, Rocky.
I might have to this time for Sarah.
Be like, do 3 days. Be like, what up, people?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Maybe I should just do that just for like, listen, I'm going in.
You'll be so sleep deprived by the end of that whole
Oh
experience.
my gosh, yeah. Like, this is Rocky in her big fluffy robe and her margarita and her smudgy raccoon eyes. That's the writer look.
It's what's chic right now.
Writer chic. But the thing is that, again, just like Sarah, but I had that experience of waiting, of not committing. And I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. And that's why we're so passionate about this, because no one should have to go through that. And so you write, you complete, and then you're like, oh, I can do this again. It's a matter of just getting it done, 1 page at a time, 1 chapter at a time, and you get there. And so your confidence keeps growing, and you just become absolutely certain that you're capable. And so when you're absolutely certain about something, it happens. And that's what we want for you. We want you to, in this moment, commit to a idea, a story, and it can be the thing that's lighting you up the most, or it can be the thing that, whatever it is, we want you to commit now. Right now, you have to commit. And then get writing.
And we have ways for people to do that, Rocky, don't we?
Oh my goodness, we do. So we have created a 1-month program for men and women to come and just rock out in their author power. We're keeping it so that's really accessible for people. And what they get is that every single day, they're going to get an email with inspiration, a pep talk to get you writing, an exercise to overcome writer's block, and then a prompt if you do feel stuck, a writing prompt to get you going. And then we're going to have it in this group online where you can show up, you can share, you can ask questions. We're going to do live calls with both Sarah and I.
You want to hang out.
Exactly. If you want to hang out, like, people rarely have this amount of access to us, but we really wanted to be able to do this because November is National Novel Writing Month, and we want to start this revolution of people actually committing, actually showing up, actually completing. Our intention is for you to be able to take a selfie with your printed out manuscript by the end of this time. We want you to be able to be inspired and be actually writing. And we're going to give you everything that we can deliver so that you can do that.
So you can have a holiday gift to yourself with your finished book.
Exactly. Like who here said, I'm going to write my book in 2016? And then back in September, you're like, maybe not. Well, we're saying that you can, and we're saying you will. So get your shiznit together, love. So absolutely, that we really want to inspire you to make sure you stay on track. And this program is a way that we can do that. So if it resonates with you, if you're hit with it, if it's something that you are excited about, then I encourage you to join. The information will be in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. So definitely sign up to hang out with us. And then you can also rock the writer chic with the raccoon eyes and the fuzzy robe with all of us.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to take a picture like that and put it in our group just to, start the trend.
So you have to sign up for that group if you want to see Rocky looking really chic right there up in there.
Exactly. Sign up for the group. I promise to make it worth it.
Is there anything else you want to share, Rocky? Or should we sign off?
I think we're going to sign off because I think that we have shared what we need to share for today, and we've given them all they need to know to join us in November.
And complete it with your fuzzy robe. So this is Tea and Tequila, and we hope you have an awesome day, and we'll see you in November.